Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
The Stock Movers Report, your roundup of companies making moves in the stock market, harnessing the power of Bloomberg data.
Let's dive into some of the stocks on the move today in Europe. I'm Lizzie Burden. I'm alongside Caroline Hepker, and we're joined by our Bloomberg reporter, Chloe Melee. Chloe, we've got to talk about L'Oreal, down on some disappointing sales growth. Because we're worth it, might not be the sentiment among investors right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, L'Oreal shares, as you say, are getting hit quite hard this morning because of those disappointing sales for the third quarter. And that was due primarily to a lot of weakness in the US market. So one of the key problems is that L'Oreal is really overexposed to the makeup category in the US, and that is a category that has been struggling lately, and consumer demand in the US is quite weak just generally. There's signs, however, of improvement in China, where it's sort of quite good demand for the more kind of high-end side of those beauty products, but that really wasn't enough to offset that drag from the US. And the CEO also was quite cautious about China, saying that analysts should not get too excited because one good quarter does not mean that there's a trend there. So disappointing sales, a cautious commentary, all of that led to that weakness in the shares this morning. Perhaps L'Oreal is hoping that some M&A could boost growth. We remember that over the weekend we had the news about L'Oreal buying the fragrance maker House of Creed from Kering. It was also named as a preferred bidder to buy a stake in Giorgio Armani last month. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well.
Okay, so that on L'Oreal. Barclays, though, has announced a narrow earnings beat and also this £500 million share buyback. Investors seem to be viewing that fairly positively.
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually upgraded its guidance for net interest income as well, announced that £500 million buyback, said it was now going to move towards quarterly share buybacks. And all of that is despite the fact that it actually had to almost quadruple the provisions related to the motor finance redress program. But obviously the market reacted quite positively to the upgrade and the buyback, of course. If we look at the actual numbers, it looks a little bit mixed. So equities revenue actually fell short of expectations. Fixed income did a bit better. So it seems like Barclays actually missed out on some of the boost from that market volatility that the US banks had actually flagged last week. It's also worth noting that the investment bank booked a £110 million credit impairment charge for a client, and the CEO mentioned that the bank remains vigilant across the lending book, which of course is related to that stress in the credit market that we've been talking about recently. So it's pretty good so far, but there's been a little bit of caution there as well.
And of course, we've got our eye on the European chip makers, the likes of STMicro, given the West Texas Instruments outlook that came out. STMicro down 2.7%. Is that the only reason?
Well, it seems like STMicro and also BE Semi, Infineon, so those chip makers that are exposed to the industrial and automotive chip sector, because as you mentioned, their peer over in the US, Texas Instrument, provided quite a disappointing forecast and then said that the recovery in those end markets was slowing down. So the key takeaway for those European chip makers is that, the industry is in recovery, but it's quite a muted recovery, muted rebound. And so that's dragging down those shares in STMicro and Infineon, even as all of the talk about the AI boom has led to quite a lot of bullishness in that semiconductor sector. There's also the exposure to those, maybe less interesting and less sexy end markets, but that are also quite crucial, like industrials and automotive.
The Stock Movers Report from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.